You forgot your jacket.
Gee, thanks, little bro.
See you later.
We're the surfers, let the good times roll.
Back in '66, when 13-year-old Mike Anderson began jamming with his 14-year-old friend John Byrum, it would mark the beginning of a lifetime friendship and a musical connection that would endure to this very day. This humble beginning would launch a musical group that would grow to legendary status in Monroe County and beyond. The Surfers story starts here.
Well, it kind of started with Mike and I remember one of my first memories was being at spending the night with Mike at his house when he lived out on 411. And we watched one of those 60s shows, Hullabaloo or Where the Action Is, or one of those things. And the Birds played a song on there. It was one of their big hits.
Probably Mr. Tambourine.
Mr. Tambourine Man. Yeah. I heard that song and watched them play, and I said, I'd love to do something like that. And he had a guitar.
Not much of one, but I had.
Yeah, it wasn't much of one, but none of us had much of one at that point. I thought if we could learn to do that, we could do something with it. I think we were, what, 12, 11?
12, 13 years old, something like that. I remember I was actually playing drums at the time with a group in town and called the Spiders. I was playing the drums. But anyway, I would watch the lead guitar player and the rhythm player play, and I was like, man, I want to learn how to do that. So Dad got this old guitar, an old Sears guitar, and I would go to practice with those guys, and I'd listen to the guitar players, and I'd learn a part, and I'd think, gee, I really need somebody to play guitar with me. And I remember going to Johnny's house, and we'd go up there, and I think we learned pipeline. Like that, I think is what it was, and we'd play back and forth with lead and rhythm, and I think that's the way the Surfers started.
Yeah, I had an old True Tone guitar. I paid $26 for it.
And then I was with Worm down at my house. We was up the road, and Mike come by on a moped, and I got invited to come up and play with him up on the porch.
And I guess we better let everybody know ahead of time, like when he said Booworm or Boo, nicknames.
Yeah, so, we all have nicknames.
So I'm Slick.
I'm Cobb.
I'm Farmer.
Yep. And I'm the Worm.
He's the Worm. Okay, so we got that squared away now. So you won't get confused.
Exactly. Now, how Jimmy got in the band is kind of that's kind of a foggy period for me. In my mind, he's always been part of the Surfers. In fact, some of my first memories of us practicing were on his garage at his patio.
Yeah, and how it got to that, I can't remember. But
you guys know?
Somehow we got it together. I don't know.
Because we practiced on your all's front porch.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember that.
On the front porch, yep.
Sure did.
That was a million years ago.
Yeah.
And we learned simple songs.
Beatles.
Yeah, a lot of Beatles. A lot of, you mentioned Pipeline, stuff like that.
Sleepwalk.
Sleepwalk.
yeah.
Things like that.
Then I used a 6-string guitar, turned all the treble off and all the bass up, and that was my bass
That was
guitar.
the bass guitar. Yeah.
And when we started out, I didn't have any drums. I had to use Mike's drums. He had a set of drums that he used with the Spiders, and I had to start out on his. I actually learned to play on his drums. First set of drums I got, they were kind of cheap, and then after about a year of playing those, they began to start coming apart on me, and so I had to go back to Dad and tell him, Dad, those drums just they're not holding up. I'm gonna have to have a better set. And so Dad said, well, I'll let you get you another set, but you're gonna have to pay for them. And so I said, well, okay, I think I can make enough money to pay for them. And so Mike knew about Hughley's in Knoxville. I'd never been there, but he said they had a lot of drums there. And so I said, well, that's where I want to go. So me and Mike and Dad got in the old 58 Chevy station wagon one Saturday morning and took off to Hughley's Music Store in Knoxville. And I remember walking into that place, and I'd been to Tommy Covington's and a couple of other little music stores, but I'd never seen anything like that. I walked into that place, and the first thing I saw was drums. And they had shelves built out on the walls, I guess about 8 feet up, and they had shelves built out about 4 feet all the way around the room, a huge room. And those shelves were filled with drums all the way around. I'd never seen so many drums in one place. And walked back, and there was another room on back that you could go into, and walked in there, and it was the same thing, drums all the way around that room. And when I walked into that second room, I saw the drums I wanted sitting over in the left-hand corner. It was the Ludwig's, just like Ringo had. It was a black oyster pearl drums that I knew when I went up there that that's what I wanted, but I didn't think they'd really have them. But they did. And I spotted them, and I said, right there's what I want. And so we left that day, Hughley's, and I had the drums that I never thought I could ever have, but I had them. And I got the cymbals. I got some Zildjian cymbals that day. And you wouldn't believe the difference. I guess the rest of the guys could tell you the difference that those drums made as far as the sound. Those Ludwigs were unbelievable. And I wish I'd have kept them.
When the Surfers went to play their first gig, they were missing a very important piece of equipment. But did that stop them? No way. They were having way, way too much fun.
We went up to the Legion Hall to play and didn't have a microphone. I just kind of shouted pretty loud. Yeah. But anyway, I remember it was Kenneth Crowder let us borrow a little microphone, and we thought we'd died and gone to heaven. We had a microphone. We plugged every one of those guitars and that microphone in 1 amp.
In 1 amp.
So it was not real high fidelity, but we loved it. We were having a blast.
Being a musician wasn't always a top priority for a couple of the guys, but that night at the Legion Hall would be a turning point. Bad news for the Tornadoes, good news for the Surfers.
People came that night. You guys, it was full, wasn't it?
It was, yeah, pretty full.
And at the time, Johnny and I were actually, we went out for football. And we were on the football team. And
I remember this.
that night we were playing at the Legion Hall. One of our coaches came up there to our dance.
Jerry O'Neill.
And
We thought he'd come to party with us.
had a big time. He just danced with all the girls and had a big time. And we thought, well, that's cool. And well, the next day, John and I went down to practice, and we found out that we were 35 minutes past curfew. at that dance, and so we had to run 35 laps.
Yeah, he partied with us and busted us.
So we ran those 35 laps, and there's a picture in one of the annuals where we're laying there on the floor after we ran them. We were about dead.
Yeah, buddy.
But the next day, the head football coach was Jim Quarles.
Jim Quarles.
He called us into his office, and he said, guys, here's the way it is. You're either going to have to give up football or you're going to have to give up music. And I guess me and John about the same time handed him our helmet.
Here's your helmet.
And said, see you, coach.
That was it for my football career.
And good for the band.
Yeah. And we were stupid enough to run all those laps.
Yeah.
The Surfers were invited to play a dance at the high school gym after a big Friday night football game at MHS. Suddenly, the Surfers were cast into the local spotlight.
You know, I remember that playing that gig, but I guess probably I should have been like really scared, you know, because I was probably 13 at the time.
You were the youngest guy in the group.
And we were playing for like seniors in high school, you know, and we played in the prom too, but I didn't think anything about it. I guess they just thought we were more mature, but but it worked out. But I wasn't frightened, but I probably should have been, but I just didn't know enough to be frightened.
I think, like you, I think I was too stupid to be scared.
I remember doing that, and I remember the gig, and I remember getting up on that stage in the old junior high.
Yep.
I think I had a few butterflies.
And I was scared.
Yeah.
I'll be honest, I was scared.
Well, I was too. I was the bashful one out of all four of us.
Yeah, he was Ringo.
Yeah, some people thought I was stuck up, but it was just I was bashful and I had to get to know people. So I was like a farmer. I was scared too.
And there was a huge crowd that night.
Oh yeah,
There was a lot of people in that gym that night.
Mm-hmm.
And there we were, little green weenies up there playing for these juniors and seniors.
Yeah.
Most of the guys had never been very far out of Madisonville, but a trip to Nashville would soon be on the horizon for the group.
We were entered into a T-Berry JC's Battle of the Band. That was the biggest.
T-Berry gum.
T-Berry gum.
Sponsored.
For those of you who aren't old enough to remember T-Berry.
Still good gum.
Yeah, it's real good gum.
And this was actually a nationwide deal. But at the time we started, it was, of course, just local. And they actually, just in the state of Tennessee, there was over 100 bands that entered this Battle of the Bands.
Yeah, no member could be over 17.
18.
Right? 18. No member could be over 18.
Yeah.
And you had to win at different levels. So we started local here in Madisonville, won that. And then Knoxville.
We had to go to Knoxville. We won Knoxville. And then the top bands, they had another competition in other parts of the states. And the 4 bands that won those competitions went to Nashville. And in 1969, that's where we were for the state finals, Battle of the Bands for Tennessee.
Right.
Yeah, we were one of the 4 best teen bands in the state of Tennessee at that time.
And we got over there, and we were the only 4-piece band over there.
Yeah.
There was one other band that was 5-piece, and the other 2 bands were huge. They had the horns,
Looked like the Tennessee marching band.
backup singers and everything. And there we were, 4 little kids that didn't know a whole lot about anything. But boy, we had a ball.
We did.
And
That's where Bobby earned his nickname, Moss. Because in the bulletin, they had his name listed as Bobby Moss. And you don't ever make that kind of mistake around us. We'll never let them forget it. Never let them forget it, ever. Every band had to use the same equipment. So they didn't have an advantage. It was tough. There were some good bands there.
And there was, we actually finished 3rd, I think, in that competition.
We did.
And one of the bands, there was the 5th Exit, I believe was their name. they actually went on and won the national
They
competition.
sure did.
So they were really good.
Stiff competition.
And
Yeah,
so we were pretty proud of ourselves to be third
we were.
out of all those bands.
We were.
That was kind of gut wrenching. It was a lot of fun, but I mean, when you looked out and saw a couple of thousand people from Nashville, knowing some of these people were in the music business, staring back at you, that was tough. It was tough and exciting. It made you step it up a level.
Then we were the only band that changed. The first night we wore one uniform and had one gig sheet, and the last night we changed into a different outfit and different set of
music.
songs.
Yeah.
The other bands played the same sets twice.
And we got complimented for that.
Yeah.
And then,
when the Surfers Dances started up at the Farm Bureau building, all us guys, so me, Reedy, Ted Cagle, Bill Lewis, and Steve Sloan, and Joe McDowell. 6 of us ran around together all the time. Anyway, we'd meet them at either my house or at Cagle's house, and then walk to the Farm Bureau building. I learned to smoke. That's where I learned to smoke. We smoked an entire pack of cigarettes between my house and the Farm Bureau building, just walking. And to this day, I can blow really good smoke rings. Absolutely wonderful music. Of course, I mean, you guys love listening to the music. Still listen to the '60s music on the radio.
I'll never forget Jimmy Sample's dad always being there.
Oh yeah, safe.
And your dad.
Absolutely. I mean, it was a safe place. It was a good place for kids to go. All the girls were there.
Sometimes those boys from Calico would stir up a little trouble.
Yeah.
Just sometimes.
No, we didn't have that much trouble. We had a pretty good relationship with most of them.
Mm-hmm.
But wasn't it the Inglewood boys that Cagle had problems with?
We had a problem with one.
Well, that's right. That was resolved at the A&W, though, behind the A&W. So that wasn't a problem. But no, the just having a place to go and that was safe and not any problems, good music, good times, and get to see all my friends.
Back then, the only thing I was worried about is whether or not we had a place to play on the weekend.
Right.
Other than that, I was pretty carefree, you know, so it was probably the greatest time of my life when I was a young guy.
Oh, yeah.
Didn't have any cares at all, just we're going to be able to have a place to play this weekend, so.
Yeah,
that was our only word.
And we made money.
Good crowd.
Good crowd, good money. Everybody knew who we were.
It was fun.
It was a lot of fun. I mean, it had its ups and downs, but 99.9% of the time, it was a blast.
And then I had a little baby girl named Shannon. And Shannon and Mike's little sister, Sherry, were there every Saturday night that they could come. And they played together and they danced together. And I must say, Shannon was raised listening to the Surfers. And I loved them. The kids loved them. They were the only thing in this town that the kids had to do on a Saturday night. And their dads, and Bob Mosier, and Jimmy Sample's daddy, and every once in a while Gordon would show up. And they watched and cared over those kids. They took care of the outside. There was no ruckus, nothing bothering these kids as long as the Surfers were playing. And even I got to dance. That was something. Really, I loved music and I loved to dance. So that was my part of the Surfers, was my John. And there was, oh gosh, what would we have done? What would we have done without the Surfers?
I was singing and playing the guitar one night at Farm Bureau building, and guitar was sounding normal like it normally does. I could hear my guitar, and all of a sudden I heard this loud crash, and it quit. And I thought, what happened? So my amp blew up? No, what happened was Jimmy hit the crash cymbal so hard, it fell on the floor, and what it did, it cut my guitar cord. So I was like playing lifeless, you know, unplugged with that little red Gretsch guitar. It's a good thing it didn't hit me, but he hit that cord and cut that sucker right smack dab too.
Just like a guillotine. It just cut that thing.
Cut it right through.
And back then, cords were these curly, white curly things that would stretch forever. And but boy, it cut that thing right in half.
You were looking around.
Oh, me.
Played chord organ, and then Mom and Dad sent me to this lady back behind McDonald's now, and played the trumpet and the baritone in the band. And then Jimmy, my brother, got a arch top guitar, hollow body. We played around with that, and he would do Everly Brothers songs, and we'd sing together on those. And then naturally, Uncle Vane Kirkpatrick, he played the guitar, the banjo, the violin, and the French harp, and so he taught Jimmy and I both how to play the guitar. And then after I met up with you guys, Mike and Johnny both, I believe, helped me learn how to play the bass. I looked forward to playing on Friday and Saturday nights. It was a blast, had a lot of fun. We worked hard through the week, learning the songs, and when it came to Friday and Saturday nights, it was just like a dream come true.
After the gig and after we got everything broke down and loaded up, headed straight for the lamp post. We always had to have a surfer burger because I was always starved to death right after those dances.
Well, Saturdays were hard because you had to set up, and we practiced that day too for what we were going to do that night. Right. And we played hard, gave it everything we had for 3 or 4 hours, and then so we were very hungry afterwards.
Then you had to tear down.
Yeah.
Another half hour, 45 minutes tearing down low.
A lot of effort, yes.
Yeah, back then the A&W and the lamp posts were the places to be. But we always went to the lamp post because you could go inside and sit down and eat. And those places were jammed with people that had just left the surfer dance.
Well, the first guitar I ever owned was a Sears Silvertone that my dad bought, and I think he gave like $10 for it. It was a classical guitar, had a big old wide neck. That sucker was hard to play. The neck was like really wide. And it had nylon strings on it. But I was determined I was going to play that thing. And I broke all the strings. And you weren't supposed to put steel strings on it. But way back then in Monroe County, you couldn't buy nylon strings like anywhere. So I went to the drugstore and gave like 99 cents for them good old black diamond strings. Bowed that neck. It was unreal how it bowed the neck. But anyway, that was the first guitar. The surfer guitar was my favorite color. It was like blood red, and it was called a Gretsch Astro. I never will forget my dad, the late Gordon Anderson, took me up to Tommy Covington's. Dad took me up there, and I looked up on the wall, and there was that red guitar, and my eyes just stopped. That was the one I wanted, was that red guitar, that Gretsch Astro. Had a tremolo bar on it, and it was kind of a futuristic looking shape that it had, played wonderful. So we took that thing home, and a Gretsch amplifier. I never will forget that, but that was probably one of the most happy days in my life that I can remember, is having my dad take me to Tommy Covington's in Maryville to pick up that Gretsch Astro and that amplifier.
So when they learned to play, I heard one of the Hey, Hey, We're the Monkeys song. And I listened to that until I thought I would go crazy. If I had the monkeys there, I would kill them.
Most of the time we practiced in our living room. I don't know how Mom and Dad stood it, but they did. And in our living room we had a stereo had a record player and a radio on it, and I would always set my drums up right in front of that stereo so that I could reach over in there and put the record on that we wanted to practice, and you know, I could set the needle down just about anywhere we needed it to be.
Wherever we needed it to be.
And that's how we learned songs. And that's how we got the words to songs. We would learn the song, and then we would have to go back and get the words to the song.
Right.
We'd say stuff like about the words. Did you get that?
Yeah. What did it say right there? And sometimes we didn't get it right. Yeah, we got it close.
But as far as being able to put that needle where it needed to be, I got pretty good at it.
He was the man.
Excellent.
But apparently, they finally got it, and they played, and they played, and they played.
When I was in the 6th grade, I was in Miss Howe's class, and one of my classmates, Gail Newman, brought a 45 of the Beatles, I Want to Hold Your Hand on the A side, and I saw her standing there on the B side. And I had never heard anything like that in my life. And that's when I started being really interested in being a musician. So Gail, thank you for that. I owe it all to you. You know, I've been asked about my high school years several times, and I can answer it in 2 words. The Surfers. We practiced almost every day, and when we weren't practicing, we were putting up signs, and when we weren't putting up signs, we were playing. So it was, my high school years were the Surfers. That's who we were. You know, everything you've ever done in your lifetime has led you to this point right here where we are today. And so I think the Surfers helped shape me, made me the person I am today. Because for 5 or 6 years, that's who I was. And it never leaves you. That never leaves you. So no, I wouldn't change a thing. I have no regrets whatsoever.
Basically, we hadn't been together in 25 years because we split up in 1970 and everybody kind of went our separate ways. And they called us and wanted us to come in and do that 95 reunion. That was the year they were going to shut the Madisonville High School down. And they wanted us to come in. And so for 25 years, we hadn't been together.
And when they had the big thing over at the high school, when they closed the high school or got the new school, all they had to do was strike one note. And they played after all of those many, many years. They went right together and played. The Surfers were back.
There was a music store in Sweetwater that offered to furnish our instruments for us. They were going to furnish the equipment because I didn't have any drums. And I don't know if you guys had any equipment or not, but I know I didn't. But I remember going over there to practice, and even after 25 years of not being together, it seemed like when we come together, it was still there. And you know, we practiced a couple of times, and we were ready to go. And but we got to the reunion, and that night, and I couldn't believe the people that showed up for that reunion. There was, I think, 600 to 700 people there, and it was really a very special night. I think I would speak for everybody when I just said a great big thank you to everybody that came out to all those dances that we used to have and parties and everything that we did. There was always people that would come and support us, and y'all don't know how much that meant to us. And so from me and from all of us, I would just like to say thank you so much.
The Surfers caught the Battle of the Bands fever once again after Jimmy Samples saw an ad on cable TV. But to enter the contest, the guys would need an original song and a music video for social media. Social media, you say? Well, that could have been a showstopper. Remember when the Surfers started, the basic cassette recorder didn't even exist at the time. The time had come to reinvent the Surfers in the digital age.
We were going to get involved in a battle of the bands with Charter Communications, and we needed to do a video. But first, before we did the video, we had to have a song. So I got to thinking about a song about some of the things we used to do when we were kids and when we were in the Surfers. And we had to practice that night, and it was about I'd say 20, 25 minutes before the guys were supposed to get to my house. We practiced in my basement. And I wrote that song, Cruising, in about 20 minutes and had that song ready to go by the time they got there to my house. But it was just about some of the old school things that we used to do, and what a great time that we had when we were youngsters and we were playing in the Surfers. But Cruising was one of those songs that just came real easy.
And then I remember Brother John Anderson did a video for us at the A&W when we sung it out there. And that's the video that we used and the song we used for the competition.
Exactly. And we were competing nationwide with about, 350 bands that were about a third of our age. And we had to vote. It was kind of people had to do it online. You voted online.
Well, you had to make the top 10, and then those 10, we were chosen third out of those 10.
We came in third out of those 10. So out of 350 bands nationwide, 4 old guys, gray-headed guys, finished third.
And we got to make a video.
And make a video.
Yeah.
And they gave us a little money to buy some equipment.
Yes, they did.
We had a blast.
We had a really good time doing that. Yeah, so we kind of figured out we still had it.
I got a big day tonight, don't wanna be late. I'll keep it straight in the road, won't cut no figure eights. For that girlfriend of mine is out of sight, and tonight I might get the green light. Cruising, cruising, I'm gonna see my baby tonight. I got the radio blasting, coming out of third gear. Got the rack top down, digging A&W root beer. I'm gonna burn rubber at the traffic light, cause there's not a single cop in sight. I'm cruising, cruising, I'm gonna see my baby tonight. She's 5'4" and she looks just great. When I look at her, it's hard to concentrate. Now you know why I don't wanna be late. 36, 24, 38. You know she's hard to handle, and that's a fact. When she touches me, you know I might have a heart attack. She knows how to love me, yes indeed, and satisfaction is guaranteed. I'm cruising, cruising, gonna see my baby tonight. Just great. When I look at her, it's hard to concentrate. Now you know why I don't wanna be late. 36, 24, 38. You know she's hard to handle, that's a fact. When she kisses me, you know I might get a heart attack. She knows how to love me, yes indeed, and satisfaction is guaranteed. I'm cruising, cruising, I'm gonna love my baby tonight. I'm cruising, cruising, I'm gonna love my baby tonight. I'm cruising, cruising.
One-Way Trip to Dover, to me, is one of the best songs I've ever written. I've written a lot of songs, most of which no one's ever heard of and never will. But One-Way Trip to Dover was a special song to me. Mike Anderson had sent me an email about a young man, Frankie Watson, who had been killed in Afghanistan, and his body was coming back in to Knoxville Airport to be brought down to Madisonville. And I was thinking, wow, what a shame that this young man was taken in the prime of his life. But every soldier that's killed in action is brought back through Dover Air Force Base in Delaware. And I was thinking, wow, a one-way trip to Dover. That's not, and no one would want that. And then I started thinking about it, what kind of tribute we could give this young man. And that song literally wrote itself. Once I started writing, it just poured out. In about 2 hours, I had the whole thing written, and I had emailed it to Mike, and I said, I need to put some music to this. Can you help me out?
And I just threw myself into it, and it just was one of those songs that the melody wrote itself. It really did. It was really an honor to be able to help do that song for Frankie Watson.
And he actually put the music together that night, and that was on a Sunday, and we actually recorded the song that Tuesday night. So I've heard artists talk about how songs write themselves. I actually experienced that. That's what really happened here. It was like it was ordained, like it was meant to be. So that's one of my highlights of my musical career.
On a one-way trip to Dover, in a flag-draped box of wood, was the body of a hero. All that knew him knew he could bring smiles to all the faces of his family and his friends. He had a God-given gift of courage that was with him till the end. He was always very special, a fact that no one could deny. His life was not that easy, but he never wondered why. Then came that time, a choice was made to stay a boy or be a man. Well, he made that hard decision. His life was in God's hands. On a one-way trip to Dover, a trip that no one wants to make, the soldier knew that it was possible, but a chance we knew he'd take. For God, for love of country, as a warrior, he stood tall. We love this man, the hero, the one who gave his all. Tears we cried that fateful day would fill the ocean blue. We bowed our heads, closed our eyes, and we said a prayer or two. We asked our Lord to walk him home and take away our pain. Be with him forever, Lord, until we meet again. On a one-way trip to Dover, a trip that no one wants to make, the soldier knew that it was possible, but a chance we knew he'd take. For God, for love of country, as a warrior, he stood tall. We love this man, the hero, the one who gave his all.
Ever since the Surfers hit that first note at the Legion Hall many, many years ago, Surfer fans have been very loyal to the band, always showing their love and support of the Surfers and their music. Surfer fans are simply the best. The Surfers' wish for you is throughout life's ebb and flow, we hope you'll always let the good times roll.
Cut. You want to do it one more time? Just the hiccup?
No shades?
No shade? No, it's all right. I'm too tired to go get them. What are you ordering, Larry? Just tell us when you're ready to roll.
I'm rolling.
Oh, he's rolling. Action.
Gee, thanks, little bro.
See you later.
Gee, thanks, little bro.
I forgot.
I don't know where Cobb came from, but Moss was at the Battle of the Bands.
Battle of the Bands, he was Bobby Moss.
Yeah.
Bobby Moss.
I remember that one. It's the Cobb. I can't.
I don't know. I don't remember.
You got the script, Zane.
And I've had Booworm since time eternal.
What was it?
Since Moby was a minnow.
Yes, sir.
All right. Booworm, see if I can get in here.
Yep.
All right, Mike, it's all yours.